Have you ever told someone I'm fine while feeling the exact opposite? Most people do. It sounds harmless, but psychology says this habit hides deeper patterns. Patterns so strong, they shape how you think, how you communicate, and how you connect with others. So here's a question for you. When you say I'm fine, are you protecting yourself or are you slowly shutting down? Keep watching and you will see the real reasons people hide their emotions behind those two simple words. People who say I'm fine are not always lying. They are managing, they are surviving. They are choosing the safest answer. But that safe answer reveals a lot. Today, you will learn the psychology behind this behavior. You will see why some people hide their stress, their pain, or their frustration even from the closest people in their life. And you might recognize yourself in more than one of these traits. Trait 1. They avoid emotional exposure. People who always say, I'm fine, usually fear emotional exposure, not because they are weak, but because they grew up in environments where emotional honesty felt risky. Maybe they were judged for expressing sadness. Maybe someone dismissed them when they shared a problem. Maybe their childhood taught them that emotions invite criticism, so they learned the safest strategy: stay neutral. Say, I'm fine, and move on. It stops question. It removes attention. It lets them stay in control. But here's the problem. When you avoid emotional exposure, you also avoid emotional connection. Think about the last time you asked someone how they were and they said, I'm fine. Did you feel closer or more distant? That same effect happens around people who use this phrase every day. Trait 2. They protect others more than themselves. Some people say, I'm fine, because they want to protect the people around them. They don't want to burden anyone. They don't want to create stress. They don't want to sound dramatic. So they bottle everything. They smile. They keep conversations light. They keep problems hidden until the weight becomes too heavy to carry. This pattern is tied to high empathy. People with high empathy absorb tension. They avoid conflict. They track how their words impact others. But that same empathy makes them hide their truth. Instead of asking for support, they save everyone's comfort at the cost of their own. Trait 3. They fear losing control. Psychologists talk about emotional regulation, the ability to manage feelings without being overwhelmed. People who say, I'm fine, rely on tight emotional regulation. They try to stay composed at all times. They try to look stable, even when the inside feels messy. They avoid crying in front of people. They avoid showing anger. They avoid any sign of vulnerability. The phrase, I'm fine, becomes a shield. It keeps them calm. It keeps them steady. It becomes a script that prevents emotional overflow. But here's the twist. The more they try to stay in control, the more they disconnect from their natural emotional rhythm. And when they disconnect long enough, they lose the ability to express feelings even when they want to. Trait 4. They mistrust emotional questions. When someone says, how are you? Most people hear a simple question, but people who always say, I'm fine, hear something else. They hear pressure. They hear expectation. They hear responsibility. They worry that if they open up, the other person will pull away, judge them, or use that information against them later. This mistrust usually comes from past experiences. Maybe they opened up once and someone used it as gossip. Maybe someone mocked their feelings. Maybe their vulnerability was treated as weakness. So now they default to the safest answer, the shortest answer, the least revealing answer: I'm fine. Trait 5. They carry emotional overload. People who say I'm fine often hide stress until it becomes overwhelming. Their mind becomes crowded with thoughts. Their emotions stack up. They try to stay calm, but the pressure grows day by day, so they shut down. They switch to autopilot. They operate in silence because speaking takes too much energy. If you have ever felt mentally drained and responded with, I'm fine, you know how this feels. Your mind wants quiet, not questions. Your body wants stillness, not attention. You give the simple answer because anything deeper feels exhausting. Trait 6. They grew up being the strong one. In many families, one person becomes the emotional anchor, the one who listens, the one who comforts, the one who solves problems, the one who stays steady no matter what chaos happens around them. These people learn a simple rule. Their emotions must stay hidden so others can feel safe. So when someone asks how they are, they say, I'm fine, not because they feel fine, but because they feel responsible. They think expressing their own stress will make things worse. They think they need to stay strong for everyone else. And over time, this becomes a permanent identity. The strong one, the stable one, the one who never cracks. But the cost is heavy. They lose the right to be vulnerable. Trait 7. They fear being misunderstood. For some people, expressing emotions feels pointless because they believe no one will understand them. They think their problems are too personal or too complicated. They think explaining themselves will only create confusion or minimize their experience. So instead of trying, they shut down. They choose the simple answer. They choose emotional silence. They choose, I'm fine, because at least silence cannot be misunderstood. Trait 8. They avoid emotional conflict. Some people hate emotional conflict more than anything. The idea of being questioned, challenged, or confronted feels uncomfortable. So they smooth everything out with one phrase, I'm fine. They use it to avoid arguments. They use it to avoid deeper discussions. They use it to avoid the emotional work of explaining themselves. This habit looks calm on the surface, but inside it creates tension because avoiding conflict doesn't remove the problem. It only delays it. Trait 9. They don't know how to identify their own emotions. This one is common and rarely talked about. Some people say, I'm fine, because they don't know what they feel. They feel pressure in their chest but can't name it. They feel tired but don't know why. They feel off but don't know how to describe it. This psychological pattern is linked to emotional awareness. Some minds understand logic better than feelings, so they default to the simplest explanation. I'm fine. It becomes a placeholder for emotions they haven't processed yet. Trait 10. They fear being judged as dramatic. Many people grow up hearing phrases like, stop overreacting, you're too sensitive, don't make a big deal out of nothing. These statements teach the mind to minimize pain, so they hide everything. They downplay every feeling. They call it fine, even when it's not fine at all. They think this protects them from judgment, but in reality, it builds emotional distance. Trait 11, they use humor as a shield. People who say, I'm fine, often use humor to block deeper questions. They joke, deflect, or switch topics. They act cheerful even when they feel heavy inside. Humor becomes a mask. It keeps people from looking deeper. It makes emotional wounds invisible, but inside, they feel unseen. Trait 12, they don't want pity. For many people, pity feels worse than pain. They don't want to be looked at as weak. They don't want anyone to feel sorry for them. So they hide everything behind a calm tone. They say, I'm fine, even when they feel broken. They prefer silence over sympathy. Trait 13. They are used to solving problems alone. People who say, I'm fine, are often used to independence. Not because they want to be alone, but because they learned that relying on others is unreliable. So they trust themselves more. They solve their own problems. They keep everything inside. It feels safer. It feels predictable, but it also isolates them. Trait 14. They fear emotional disappointment. Opening up creates expectations. Expectations create risk. If they share how they feel and no one responds with care, the pain doubles. So they avoid the risk. Silence becomes protection. Here's the truth. People who always say, I'm fine, are not emotionless. They are not cold. They are not distant. They are overprotective of their inner world. They guard their heart because it has been hurt before. They hide their feelings because life taught them to survive quietly. But silence has a price. It blocks connection. It hides needs. It isolates the mind. If you recognize yourself in these patterns, here's the reminder you need. You don't need to share everything. You don't need to be open with everyone, but you deserve emotional honesty with at least one person in your life. When you understand why you say I'm fine, you get the power to change the pattern. And before you go, tell me this. Do you say I'm fine out of habit or fear? If you want videos that explain how your mind works with real psychology, not soft motivation, like the video and subscribe for more,